Well, hey, how are you doing? You've been following that Dylan Mulvaney situation with Bud Light. They've got male to female transgender as their new spokesperson, and there's been a lot of controversy about all that. You thought beer drinking was safe? Hey, you you guys better hang on to chewing tobacco. I mean, seems like nothing's safe anymore. I'm wanting to write a letter to Anheuser-Busch saying I do not drink alcohol, but if I did drink alcohol, I would stop drinking your alcohol and I would drink somebody else's alcohol. So there, like that'll really shake them up. Sometimes this stuff just seems silly, but sometimes this is dead serious. And what we're talking about today, yeah, dead serious. It's what I call transgender. Transgender, when the desire to transition is transitional. It's a trend and therefore should not be acted on in ways that are permanent. A lot of pressure on us, though, to say that it should be acted on regardless. You ever read 1984 or seen one of the movie versions, George Orwell's story, futuristic, scary story, very relevant? In this futuristic society, uh, thought crimes are serious and punishable. If you think something against the state, if you're not totally going along with Big Brother, well, you're in big trouble. So Winston Smith, the main character, has been arrested and is now being interrogated by a man named O'Brien for thought crimes. He's been thinking things that the state does not allow you to think. And so O'Brien has him literally stretched out on a torture rack. And he's saying to him, okay, Winston, how many fingers am I holding up? He holds up three fingers, and Winston says, three. And O'Brien applies the torture device, and Winston starts screaming, and O'Brien says, I was holding up two fingers. Now say it. These are two fingers. You better say it. You're going to be punished. And the poor guy on the torture rack is saying, I don't know what to do. I can't pretend I don't see three fingers. And O'Brien says, we are going to continue inflicting pain on you until you see what we want you to see. Big time pressure. We're being pressured. Oh, not quite as overtly, but we are, to conform to a whole new ideology. The ideology being people don't just discover who they are, they now have the right and the power to declare who they are. So I just don't discover that I'm male. I have the right to decide whether or not I'm male. And when I make a declaration, if I say, nope, I am not Joe, I am Elizabeth, and henceforward you will call me Elizabeth or there's hell to pay. Well, now some pretty serious demands are being made. There's actually a couple of demands being made of us today. One is the demand to go along with adults who are saying, I want to declare myself to be the sex or gender that I identify with, regardless of what my biology says. We see a grown man or woman doing that, we go, well, I don't agree with you, but most of us would be reasonable and say you have the right if you wish to do that. I wish you wouldn't, but regardless. But the other demand is even more dangerous, and that is the demand for us to also agree with a child or a teen's right, quote unquote, to declare themselves to be something other than what biology and really God has declared them to be. Now, that movement to pressure us into agreeing, even with a minor who says, Mom, Dad, people, I feel like I'm a girl. Therefore, I'm a girl, and you better tell me I'm a girl. Why that particular pseudo right is being pushed as if it's something holy. And the social pressure for us to conform to that, to bow down to that, it's astonishing. Why, I believe it was just last year, President Biden said, and I quote, to parents of transgender children, affirming your child's identity is one of the most powerful things you can do to keep them safe and healthy. Wow. Our commander in chief, our president, has said to us, the people in America, if your child says that your child is a gender other than what they were born with, if your child is identifying as being something their own biology testifies against, the way to keep them safe and healthy is to just come into agreement with them. Now, a first response that I hope we would have both as common sense adults and, more important, as believers is that's just wrong. That's just completely wrong. But there's another argument I want you to consider today, and that is it's not only wrong, it's trendy. It's trendy. More and more young people are declaring the right to determine what their gender is. And in responding to that, we have the right and the mandate as stewards of truth to appeal to both common sense and to godly truth, and to the fact that there is something very trendy about this, which is why I call it transgender. Now, there are three reasons I believe we need to speak clearly on this. Reasons that are psychological, reasons that are sociological, and reasons that are theological. Let's look at all three of these today, both the psychological ramifications and then the sociological ramifications and the theological ramifications as well. Just on a personal note, as someone who was a part of the gay community back in the late 70s, early to mid 80s, this is new territory to me. In my day, when I was a part of both a gay affirming church and part of the gay community and openly identified myself as homosexual, there was no T for transgender in the movement at that time. If we knew people who were transgender or transsexual, and a lot of us did, it's not like we ostracized them, but every gay man I knew and every lesbian woman I knew agreed, man, there's something really wrong with you if you think you are a male when you were born female, or you think you are a female when in fact you were born male. So this is relatively new territory, even within the gay rights movement. Well, with that in mind, let's look first at psychological ramifications. Psychological ramifications when a teenage kid is saying, I'm going to assert the right to identify as being whatever sex I say I am. Couple of words to keep in mind: immature, premature. Okay? Immature, premature. First, immature. The child is immature. Is that a put down? No, no. That's just like saying the child is young. I don't mean mature in the sense of good and immature in the sense of bad. I just mean the biological reality. The kid is not a matured adult. The child is immature, and therefore such a decision is premature. Well, of course it is. Now, does that mean we're completely discounting what kids feel? No. Oh, no. No, kids feel things very deeply. I remember that. A kid of any age, a prepubescent child or a teenager, they can feel very strongly about about a group they want to belong to. They can feel very strongly about a cause. They can certainly feel strongly about a relationship. Kids can fall in love, you know that. Kids can really want something badly. Kids can feel very passionately about things. And those feelings are real. So I'm not questioning the reality of the feeling when a kid says, I really think I'm a girl in a boy's body. I'm not going to say, no, you don't. That's ridiculous. I can say, well, maybe you really do. Maybe you really do. The question is not the feelings, whether or not they exist or whether or not they're strong. What I do question is whether or not the child is equipped to make a decision based on those feelings. Actually, let me say it more plainly. The child is not equipped to make a decision based on those feelings. I mean, come on. You don't get to decide to drive in most states until you're 16 years old. There's a reason for that. You don't get to vote until you're 18 in this country. You can't even get a tattoo on your body till you're 18. You can't decide to drink alcohol until you're 21. Why? Because you are still forming. And as you are forming in your intelligence and your emotional growth and your experience and your ability to determine what matters or does not matter to you and what your worldview is, while you're forming, you are not yet equipped to make such decisions. And that formation really is continuing even after 18. That prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that has to do with our self-regulation, that's not even fully formed till you're in your mid 20s, 23 to 25 years old. So for all of those reasons, we do assert a very basic common sense fact. Kids are not hurt by delaying their ability to make life-changing decisions. Kids are not hurt by delaying their option of making life-changing decisions. A kid is not going to be harmed if the kid is told, no, you will have to wait to have sex until you're an adult. You'll have to wait to drink alcohol until you're an adult. You're going to have to wait to make certain decisions until your brain is more formed. Kids are not harmed by that, but they are harmed if they're allowed to decide prematurely. In fact, some studies have shown that up to 60% of kids who identified as transgender no longer identify as transgender by the time they're in their late teens or early 20s. I mean, come on. What does that say about the kid's ability to make a permanent, lifelong decision? A life altering decision, I should say. So, why do we object when the kid says, I am transgender and I want to therefore dress and act like the opposite sex or the sex I was not born with? I want to start taking drugs to make me more like the sex I was not born into. I even want to have surgical procedures done to make me more like the sex I was not born into. Why do we object to that? Because the child is immature. Through no fault of the child's own, the child is not formed enough to make that decision, and therefore the decision is premature. Immature, premature. So first, those issues are psychological. Secondly, there are sociological issues, there are. We know there is such a thing as social contagion. When basically, for example, social contagion among adolescents, when teens start doing things they would not otherwise do because a lot of their peers are doing those things. Oh, we all know that. You remember what it was like being a teenager. Dance styles, hairstyles, clothing styles, what is or is not cool, how you speak. All of those are things that teens impact each other on, aren't they? I mean, we recognize that. So what? I I look at pictures of myself as a teenager and I think, what on earth were you thinking? And I'm glad, by the way, that those pictures show me with weird hairstyles or really long hair as a hippie or strange clothing that I wore. Because you know what? That's all very changeable. It gets a lot darker when you start talking about permanent changes made to the body. Social contagion can take on very dark shades when we're talking about, contagion issues like teen suicide or drug use or teen aggression, when kids start influencing each other to make very serious life altering decisions. Now, can this idea of social contagion apply to transgender identity? Sure seems to, doesn't it? That's why I call it transgender. Back in 2016, Dr. Lisa Littman, who's an OBGYN, she was noticing a spike in teenage girls who identified as transgender, and she noticed two common details. One, they were immersed in social media, and two, that trans ID tend to be occurring in clusters. In other words, the kids who are identifying as transgender were parts of groups in which other kids, part of the group cluster, the social network, were also identifying as transgender. Now, come on, that cannot be a coincidence. That can't be a coincidence. Now, how could that be trendy? The whole idea of saying, I think even though I was born a boy, maybe I'm a girl, or maybe I identify as a boy, though I was born a girl. That seems to be a strange trend. Well, yeah, but think about it. Okay, three things that kids need. And by the way, these are three things kids will make a lot of concessions for. I did. You probably did too. Identity, community, and cause. Look at those three: identity, community, and cause. Identity, this is who I am. Community, this is the tribe I belong to. This is my group. Cause, this is the noble cause I support and I fight for. Teens have a huge need for all three, don't they? They very much need some sense of identity. What distinguishes me? They need a sense of community. This is who I hang out with. And they need a sense of cause. This is what I stand for. Now, one young woman who had identified herself as transgender and had basically grown out of it, she wrote about her experiences and she said, and I quote, "You get people direct messaging you." She's talking about when you come out on social media as transgender. You get people direct messaging you being like, "Wow, this must be so hard for you. How can I help you?" Or "You're so brave." There's just so much positive reinforcement that there's just no room at all for any criticism or any thought that something bad could be happening. It's quite a payback, isn't it? Quite a payoff, I should say. In other words, she's admitting, yeah, when I admitted I was transitioning, I was instantly a hero and a victim, and I was special and I was elite, and that gave me a sense of identity, gave me a sense of community, it gave me a sense of cause. Now, compare that to, for example, the young women in Salem, Massachusetts, who decided that they were, well, they didn't decide, but they claimed that they were able to discern who in the village of Salem was a witch. And they started exercising that power and saying, oh, so and so is a witch, and so is being victimized by that witch. Well, that gave them a sense of ID and identity. I'm a victim of a witch. And I'm one of those special people who can see the witches who are victimizing me. That was elite right there. It made them elite. There was a sense of community. I am a part of this special group of chosen girls who can point out who the witches are. And it gave them a sense of cause. Hey, we're going to cleanse Salem of evil. That's pretty strong stuff. That was social contagion. So, yeah, this is a sociological issue through which you've got people making life-altering decisions just for the sake of conformity or status. And then finally, you've got some serious theological issues going on here. You really do. Transgender, I believe, whether among adults or teens, whatever, it's an attack on intent. It's an attack on intent. God's intention spelled out in Genesis 1-3. Humanity is created in his image and thrives within his design. Humanity was created in his image and thrives within his design. God created Adam and Eve, male and female, and gave them the plan, the description of his design. And people thrive within that design. So why is there such a problem? Well, somebody got seduced, somebody gave in, and everybody suffers as a result. You know what I think? I think that Adam and Eve were created by God, blessed by God, set in that beautiful environment, and Satan looked at what God had created, God who Satan hated, still hates, and saw the male and female complement, the male and female union, the beauty of sex as God intended it, the beauty of family, the beauty of life as God intended it. And he said, I'll take that. And he did. You notice something today? The most vehement movements you see, social movements you see, generally have to do with something that was defined and established back in the Garden of Eden. The definition of life within the womb, be fruitful and multiply. Nope, kill it. Kill that thing in there. The definition of marriage and family, for this cause a man will leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. Nope. Redefine that to include everything. I mean, to include homosexuality or polygamy or who knows what, redefine the whole thing. Redefine the very definition of someone as male or female. So you know what? These are not issues we can surrender, you and I. Not as Christians, we can't. It's a very primary issue at stake here, and that's the issue of identity as God intended. We are foreknown and formed by God. We are foreknown and formed by God. Jeremiah 1:25, God said specifically to Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. You were foreknown. I knew what I was doing. There was a plan when I created you. And then by me, you were formed. Psalm 139. You created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I was made in the secret place. I was woven together. Before I was born, God knew me and said, that's going to be a male. And then God knit me together in my mother's womb and created me to be a male. That's it. That was his intention. And as it was for you, shoot, the first thing ever said about you almost certainly had to do with your sexual status. Even before you had a name, somebody said about you, it's a boy or it's a girl. It's almost certainly true. And your own DNA is going to testify to that, don't you? But you and I die today, God forbid, but if we did, and if our graves were dug up, 80 years from now, the DNA would testify to what we already knew. You were born male or you were born female. You want to challenge that assignment, which is a divine assignment. You know what you're doing. You are usurping divine authority. Romans 9:20. Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why have you made me thus? Hath not the potter power over the clay? That's a heck of a question we want to ask when people try to promote transgender ideology. Oh, things have changed. So now the potter no longer has power over the clay. The clay says to the potter, I will decide what I am. You have no say in this. That's why this issue, the transgender issue, especially transgender as it relates to kids, that is a hill with a big old sign on it that says die here. That's a hill that says die here. Yeah, it's a hill to die on. Of course it is. We've got a mandate to speak truth. As ambassadors for Christ, as stewards of truth, as members of the body of Christ, we have, among other things, a prophetic mandate to the culture. And the prophetic voice on this issue is a voice of reason, which would say something along these lines. Do you really believe you can become what you are not? If you really believe that you are something you are not, shouldn't we try to change the belief, which can be changed, rather than the body, which really can't be changed? So we're a voice of reason, but you know what? We're also a voice of redemption which says, hey, I love you. I recognize the confusion. I feel for you. There is a better way. If you want to know what you should be, go to the one who already determined who you really are. And there's the answer. Well, I appreciate you being with me today. If you are enjoying these podcasts, please do take a minute to subscribe to us. Hit that bell there. Let me know you subscribed. I'd like to thank you personally for that, and I want to welcome you to the community. If you'd like to support the work that we do, why, you just go to joedallas.com, and that'll show you how, joedallas.com/giving, and that'll show you how you can support our work here at Cloudfire Ministry. Well, this is Christians in a Cancel Culture. We are with you every Friday. I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Meanwhile, let's keep in mind our job description as Christians in a Cancel Culture, stewards of truth, ambassadors for Christ. Paul laid it out nicely to Timothy. The servant of the Lord must not strive, but be gentle to all, apt to teach, patient, in meekness instructing those who oppose themselves, if perhaps God will grant them repentance according to the knowledge of the truth. 2 Timothy 2:24-25. Let's always remember that, okay? As stewards of truth, it's not just where you stand. It is also how you stand. Hey, good seeing you. God bless.